Hi everyone, Tom here, and live from an Airbnb in Osaka on his annual leave is Don. He's just played Mario Tennis Fever. Don, how are you doing? How are things going? And how is Mario Tennis Fever from the demo impressions?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Yeah, Martin's fever. Where to begin with that? Me and Andre did the last time we in the saga of Mario Tennis Fever. Me and Andre did a discussion after the overview trailer came out,
Yeah.
which was just before my annual leave. Um, and one of the aspects that I mentioned back then is that I was very interested in seeing how the rackets would develop because the rackets seem to both be very good offensive and defensive options, and also you could ricochet the effects back and forth, which I thought was a really cool touch in that game. Turns out, yes, it really is that way. In the demo, you could choose half of the roster, not really the babies or a bunch of the other characters. You could choose Luma, you could choose Rosalina, you could choose Daisy, Mario, Luigi, but and so forth. And then you can combine it with the Fever racket. You have like a fireball effect. You have like a tornado. There's a bullet bill. There are a few others here and there. And basically, you charge up a meter, shoot a ball with that, and that effect basically goes back and forth until it lands
Yeah.
with one bounce on one side of the field. So basically, it can also backfire on you instantly. But what I found with that is that Fever feels like a really back and forth endeavor. It feels like it cannot completely go out one way or another. And that is fantastic because basically it means that throughout the entire match, it feels competitive.
Yeah, so it still has kind of like that fighting game spirit. Like I remember people saying Aces was like a fighting game.
Aces was indeed like a major aspect of it, was like it felt like a fighting game. And it feels more accessible.
Oh,
Um, Aces was, for tennis purposes, was basically the fighting equivalent of what a tennis game was, and they attached a lot of new elements to that made it feel like a battle game. This feels more like a tennis game. So you have your lobs, you can have your slices, you have your regular moves, which are dedicated on the three face buttons.
yeah.
But the fever moves are basically just the X button. Once you have charged it up, you can start shooting. And it goes into this sort of behind the perspective of the character
Yeah.
move, where you have a quick glance on your opponent's field and then shoot a shot with the L stick and A button. Um, and that feels almost instant. And from that point onward, even if um, it doesn't immediately land and your opponent is able to ricochet it back, it becomes sort of a ball game where you have a big instant back and forth that until it lands at some point on the field, you can basically avoid any of the effects. And
Yeah.
it sort of becomes a cat and mouse game to sort of outsmart your opponent that way.
Yeah, I was wondering how hard it is to ricochet it back because it's before it touches the ground, but normally in tennis, a ball can bounce once.
Yeah.
So it's pretty easy to get to the ball ahead of time for the most part. Like it's not like an impossible endeavor.
Oh, it's not impossible. I think that the angles in aces were a bit more impossible to overcome.
Yeah.
It didn't leave much room for errors, particularly when the power shots came into the mix.
Yeah.
With Fever, it is more reachable. Like I wouldn't say it's almost always possible to reach because there are some angles that are almost impossible to hit. Like if you do a straight line crossover and then completely diagonal, obviously that's really hard to intercept. For the most part, though, I think you always have a chance to ricochet it back and move things further back into your direction. Um, Even if it does bounce, though, it's not the end of the world, but it does mean you have a higher chance of like using losing your HP
Yeah.
and being put out for about 20 seconds out of the match. Like especially in doubles, that can be very devastating. Obviously, there you could be have a star player and still win 2 versus 1. But it puts you in such a gigantic disadvantage
Yeah.
in such a way there that you really have to play your cards almost perfectly to even make some sort of a comeback during that specific point in the game.
Yeah, how was that? Like, were you playing doubles mostly, or were you playing with a CPU 2-on-2, or were you playing against somebody?
It's mostly 2 versus 2s. The demo was locked 2 versus 2s. You
Yep.
could play on your own the demo, but still you would have a CPU partner regardless of what you were doing with that demo. Those effects, the FIFA effects, can actually be really devastating. For example, there's a tornado that basically once it bounces, it kept moving on one side of the field, and basically everything that gets cut of it, the ball will fling in a completely different direction, but like the opponent will just drop down on the floor and be like knocked back for a second or two. Which can be really disruptive towards the game, especially in a 2 versus 2 scenario.
If you were to like compare back to Mario Tennis on GameCube, which is the one I loved, like how are you feeling now after playing this compared to like seeing the overview trailer like a couple weeks ago?
I feel better about it. I will say that I still feel pretty unsure about the amount of fields that are really there.
Yeah.
And it feels like, once again, the most intricate part of that game is sort of locked behind different modes. So, for example, the Wonder Effects mode is just a separated mode from the what is basically the base game. And
Yeah.
of course, it still uses the same mechanics. And the mechanics don't really change. They're still there, inherently there, but it feels so very weird to see like a weird disconnect between what is basically the base mode and all these other modes. Well, it could have all enrolled into one across different fields altogether, sort of what Aces did. From a gameplay perspective, and that's where I sort of differs my opinion a little bit. I feel better about it now than I used to feel about it, like say a few weeks ago, like the inherent mechanics of the fever rackets and the amount of effects that it also inflicts on your opponents or basically on you if you are not very careful with it. It's inherently very fun, you know. The lightning, for example, the lightning effect was freaking insanity because once it hits the floor and you're
Yeah.
not careful, the immediate radius of it like gets impacted by it.
Yeah. I was seeing lightning hit your footage quite a bit.
But yeah, in general, right? I'm way more convinced now than I was a few weeks ago.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, again, it's sort of a wait and see with this game. Especially like the inherent mode element of it. I still need to really discover because once again, we only sell one chord.
Yeah.
Um, but like the way the characters move, the way they expressive are, especially the expressiveness of those characters, especially since they moved more into the more cartoony elements of their faces. That's really fun.
Yep.
It's very colorful. That side of it is good. It's purely it's waiting from a longevity perspective is what it really entails, you know.
Yeah. So like it is kind of like getting a big graphical switch to upgrade. You'd say like you can actually notice it over the.
Yeah.
Well, that's nice. You can
Mhm.
see I'm kind of just like thinking gameplay first, but yeah, you know, nice graphics, you know, welcome bonus. But
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
all right, well, I guess we won't have to wait too much longer because February 12th and it'll be out.
Yeah, it will be funny enough, I will just buy it on my final full day in Japan at retail, at likely at the Nintendo store, because that's likely how these things will go. So yeah, we'll play all the way through back to Europe.
All right, well, Don, thanks for being on to talk about Mario Tennis Fever. Where can people find you other than an Airbnb in Osaka right now?
You can find me at Nintendo as NENTNDAAN.
Okay, well, have a great rest of your trip, and everyone, stay tuned for more Game Explain on Mario Tennis Fever. Bye, everybody.
Bye.